Zanelli stood at Murtala Mohammed International Airport, holding her boarding pass like it was her dream come true. She was smiling, excited, ready to fly to Seychelles for her honeymoon. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from pure joy. She had just married the love of her life, or so she thought. But as the boarding call echoed through the terminal, her husband Themba leaned close and whispered something that turned her world upside down. "You're not coming." Zanelli blinked, confused. Before she could even speak, a tall woman in designer heels appeared beside Themba. She smiled confidently, took his arm like they had always belonged together, and the two of them walked toward the gate. They handed over their passports, ready to board. Zanelli couldn't move. She stood there, frozen, watching the man who had just promised her forever walk away without a second glance. People around her gasped. Phones came out. Whispers filled the air. But all Zanelli could hear was silence. Her honeymoon was gone. Her husband was gone. And it had all happened in front of everyone, like a scene from a movie, only it was her real, broken life. Zanelli stood still, her body shaking, her mind refusing to believe what had just happened. The airport around her buzzed with noise, rolling suitcases, loudspeakers, and people talking. But for her, everything felt like a blur. The man she had married just days ago had left her right there at the boarding gate. He didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't even look back. And now he was gone. A few airport staff rushed over, trying to help. One woman offered her tissues. Another man kept asking if she wanted to sit down. But Zanelli couldn't hear them properly. Her heart was breaking too loudly. The pain in her chest felt like a heavy stone pressing down on her. She felt like she was drowning. Not in water, but in shame, anger, and confusion. All around her, people stared, some with wide eyes, others whispering to each other. And then, the worst thing happened. Someone pulled out a phone, then another, and another. Soon, people were filming. The woman in the white jumpsuit, left at the gate, the man walking off with someone else. It was a story too shocking to ignore. And within minutes it was all over the internet. Videos started flooding social media under the hashtag #runawaygroomlagos. The story of a bride who got dumped at the airport spread like wildfire. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted to know what Zanelli would do next. But what no one knew was that Zanelli had been ready. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, she had started noticing little signs. Themba had been acting strange. He was always hiding his phone, texting at odd hours, disappearing for long periods, with weak excuses. Her gut told her something was wrong, but her heart wanted to believe in love. Still, just in case, Zanelli had done something smart, something bold. She had secretly placed a small tracker inside Themba's luggage. She didn't want to be suspicious, but she needed to know the truth. And now, standing heartbroken in an airport full of strangers, she was glad she had followed her instinct. She pulled out her phone, opened the tracker app and watched the little blue dot move across the screen. She knew exactly where he was going, but she didn't cry. Not anymore. She wiped her tears, stood up straight, and took a deep breath. Zanelli wasn't going to chase him to beg. No, she wasn't going to sit and cry either. She was going to do something bigger, something louder. If Themba wanted to humiliate her in public, she would turn that pain into power and make sure the world saw it. She walked away from the gate with her head held high. The same phones that recorded her heartbreak were still pointed in her direction, but now they were capturing something new. A woman who refused to fall apart. She didn't go home. She didn't call her family right away. Instead, she booked a ticket to Accra, Ghana, where her cousin Lulama lived. Lulama was not just any cousin. She was a tech genius, a social media expert, and someone who knew how to turn stories into movements. Zanelli didn't just want to disappear. She wanted to speak, to tell her story, to let every woman who had ever been hurt or left behind know they were not alone. By the time her flight took off, her mind was already racing with ideas. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Themba thought he had left her behind like she was nothing, but he didn't know who he had just messed with. Zanelli wasn't going to cry quietly in a corner. No, she was going to roar, online and everywhere. The whole world had watched her get left at the gate. Now they were going to watch her rise. Zanelli didn't go home. She refused to return with tears in her eyes and shame in her heart. Instead, she walked straight to the airline counter, wiped her face, and booked a new flight. Not to Seychelles, and definitely not to chase Themba. She was flying to Accra, Ghana. Her cousin Lulama lived there, and if there was one person who could help turn this pain into power, it was her. Lulama wasn't just family, she was a tech genius, an influencer with a huge following, and someone who always knew how to make noise on the internet. Zanelli had been humiliated in public, but she wasn't going to hide in silence. She was going to speak, to scream if needed, and Lulama was the perfect partner to help her do that. When Zanelli arrived in Accra, Lulama opened the door with open arms and fire in her eyes. "Let's show him who he left behind," she said, pulling Zanelli into a hug. The very next day, they sat down with coffee, laptops, ring lights, and a simple idea to tell the real story. Not just Zanelli's story, but stories from women everywhere who had been hurt, lied to, left behind, and still stood tall. And just like that, the Abandoned Bride Diaries was born. They created a TikTok account and posted the first video. Zanelli, still wearing the same white jumpsuit from the airport, looked straight into the camera. Her voice shook at first, but then it grew stronger. She shared what happened, from the whispered betrayal to the woman in designer heels. But she didn't cry. She smiled, not because she wasn't hurt, but because she had survived. The video ended with one sentence: "He didn't break me, he set me free." Within hours, comments poured in. Women from Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, and beyond began sharing their own stories. Some were angry, some were sad, but all were powerful. The page exploded overnight. In 2 weeks, the account had over 5 million views. Each video was more viral than the last. Zanelli read every message, every comment, and slowly she began to feel less alone. She wasn't just a woman left at the gate anymore. She was a voice for thousands. Women sent messages about being ghosted, cheated on, divorced after years of marriage, or abandoned with children. Some even shared how they got revenge or rose higher than ever after heartbreak. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was a movement. Zanelli and Lulama posted daily, sometimes funny videos, sometimes raw and emotional clips. They danced, laughed, cried, and even roasted red flags in men. Brands started noticing, journalists started calling, people started saying Zanelli was the new face of resilience. The white jumpsuit she wore became iconic, a symbol of standing tall after being knocked down. Lulama helped design merchandise with quotes like, "Left at the gate, still flying high," and "Bride, abandoned, but not broken." Orders came in from all over Africa, but more than the fame or the views, Zanelli felt something new blooming inside her. Purpose. She had taken the worst day of her life and turned it into something that made people feel seen and heard. She had cried at the gate, yes, but now women were rising together because she had dared to share her story. And deep inside, she knew. Themba thought he had the last word when he walked away. But really, that was just the beginning of Zanelli's story. And this time, she was the one writing it. While Zanelli was rising like a queen in Accra, something very different was happening in Seychelles. Themba, the man who left his bride at the airport, thought he had it all figured out. He believed he had won. In his mind, he had left behind a woman who would cry quietly and disappear, while he jetted off to paradise with someone richer, prettier, and more powerful. The woman he left with, Amahle, was no ordinary person. She was the daughter of a wealthy Ghanaian hotel tycoon. Her family owned luxury resorts across Africa, and Themba thought he had just upgraded his life. At first, everything seemed perfect. The blue waters of Seychelles, 5-star rooms, private beaches, and fancy dinners. Themba walked around like a king. He smiled, laughed, and posted photos pretending everything was fine. But what he didn't know was that the world was watching and judging. While he was sipping cocktails, the video of him dumping Zanelli at the airport was going viral. People online were angry, shocked, and disgusted. The comments came fast. "This is evil. How can someone be this heartless?" And "He's a serial scammer." The story of Zanele, the abandoned bride, had touched millions, and everyone knew Themba's face. It didn't take long for Amahle to see the video. At first, she couldn't believe it. She had been told a very different story. Themba had said his relationship with Zanele was over long before the wedding. He lied. He said it was just a misunderstanding. But Amahle kept reading the comments, the news article, and the other videos. The more she saw, the more she realized the truth. She had been used. Themba had targeted her, lied to her, and planned everything, not because he loved her, but because he wanted access to her money, her power, her family's name. Amahle felt sick. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was furious. Her family had already been planning a big hotel investment with Themba. He had convinced them to consider opening a new resort together. But now, everything stopped. Amahle pulled out of the deal immediately. She blocked him on everything, cancelled all bookings, and left Seychelles that very night. She didn't even say goodbye. 1 minute, Themba was enjoying luxury. The next, he was sitting alone in a hotel lobby, confused and broke. Reality hit him hard. No Amahle, no deal, no money. His hotel room was no longer paid for. His return flight, cancelled. He had nothing. He started calling friends, but no one wanted to be seen helping him. His name had become poison online. People called him a scammer, a coward, a heartless man with no shame. The photos of him smiling on the beach now looked disgusting to the public. He tried to defend himself online, but no one listened. The world had chosen Zanele, and for good reason. Eventually, a tourist spotted him sitting on a bench outside a closed cafe, wearing the same clothes from the night before, with no shoes, looking lost. They took a photo. That photo spread online like fire. From honeymoon to homeless, the caption read. Memes followed. One showed him begging with a sign that said, "Need money, lost everything to karma." People laughed, shared it, and made jokes. But the truth was, there was nothing funny about it. Themba had ruined his own life. Back in Accra, Zanele saw the photo too. She didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She simply looked at it for a moment and whispered, "This is what happens when you betray a good woman." And then she closed her phone and went back to filming her next video. Her story was still going strong. Her heart was healing. And Themba, he was now just a cautionary tale. Proof that when you hurt someone who truly loved you, karma doesn't just knock, it lands with a roar. Zanele was sitting on the balcony at her cousin Lulama's place in Accra, sipping tea and answering comments from the latest TikTok post, when an email popped up on her screen. She opened it slowly, not expecting anything big, but the moment she read the first line, her hands began to shake. It was an invitation from a major women's summit in Nairobi. The organizers had seen her videos, followed her story, and wanted her to speak. They said her voice was powerful, her journey inspiring, and that thousands of women at the summit needed to hear it. For a second, she couldn't believe it. Just a few weeks ago, she had been crying alone at the airport, and now she was being asked to stand on a stage in front of the world. She didn't hesitate. She said yes. But when it came time to choose what to wear, Zanele didn't go shopping for something new or fancy. Instead, she took out the same white jumpsuit she had worn on the day everything fell apart, the one she had stood in while her husband walked away. It wasn't just clothing anymore. It had become a symbol of survival, strength, and starting over. She ironed it with care, held it close for a moment, and whispered, "Let's finish what we started." When she arrived in Nairobi, the summit was already buzzing. Hundreds of women from across Africa had gathered to speak, listen, and empower each other. But the room fell silent when Zanele walked onto the stage. Bright lights lit up her face, cameras were rolling, and all eyes were on the woman in white. She took a deep breath and began to speak. Her voice was calm but full of emotion. She talked about love, betrayal, public shame, and how she almost let it break her. But then she spoke of choice, the choice to rise, to speak out, and to reclaim her story. She didn't just talk about Themba. She talked about every woman who had been abandoned, cheated, or made to feel small. She talked about turning pain into power, and how her cousin helped her find her voice again. As she spoke, people cried. Some nodded, Others held hands. It wasn't just a speech. It was a shared moment of healing. And when she ended with the words, "I wasn't left behind, I was set free," the entire hall stood up. Every single person clapped. Some cheered. Others wiped tears from their eyes. It was a standing ovation that lasted minutes. That night, someone posted a short clip of her speech online, just 15 seconds long. It was the moment she said those now famous words, standing tall in the white jumpsuit. By morning, the video had over 10 million views. People were reposting it on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Celebrities commented. News channels played it. Young girls turned it into a phone wallpaper. Her face, her voice, her message, they were everywhere. For so long, Zanele had been known as the abandoned bride, but now she was something more. A symbol, a movement, a reminder that being left behind isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something better. Back in her hotel room in Nairobi, Zanele sat by the window and looked out at the city lights. She was quiet, holding her phone and watching the views climb higher and higher. But more than that, she was proud, not of the fame, but of the fact that she had walked through fire and come out shining. Her story had started in tears, but now it was lighting fires in other women's hearts. She had spoken her truth, and the world had listened. 1 year later, the same airport that once held Zanele's deepest heartbreak now held something else. Her face shining bright on a huge billboard, right above the departure gates at Murtala Mohammed International Airport. There she was, wearing the same white jumpsuit, standing tall with a suitcase in hand. The words next to her read, "Fly solo, rise strong." She had become the face of a global travel campaign, inspiring women everywhere to travel boldly, live freely, and never wait for anyone to choose them. The girl who had been left behind had become a symbol of power, healing, and freedom. People at the airport stopped to take pictures of the billboard. Some even pointed and whispered, "That's her, Zanele." She had gone from a viral heartbreak to a worldwide movement. Her videos, her message, her courage, they had touched millions. She didn't just heal, she flew. And this time, she was flying business class, sipping orange juice, with peace in her heart and power in her smile. Meanwhile, somewhere in Windhoek, Themba sat outside a casino, dusty and broke. A paparazzi snapped a photo of him holding a sign. The internet did what it does best, turned it into a meme. Karma had spoken. And Zanele? She just kept flying,